Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the infamous Sylvia channel, where we're going to do the reenactment of the trial for Robert Sylvester Kelly. And the date that we're reenacting this evening is August 19th. This is with the cross-examination of Jerhonda Pace. Again, we have Mr. Canick and Miss Candy, Miss Geddes. Well, Candy is Jerhonda, and Rhoda is our court. And of course, you know Miss Geddes, she's the other side, the prosecutor side. All right, guys, we are on page 301 for those who are following with the transcript. We are on page 301. All right, let's get it rolling. All right, let's go.
That you got from Robert. Am I correct?
Yes.
And you testified about giving him money back.
Yes.
Now, you also gave Bubba some of that money. Am I correct?
Yes.
How much did you give Bubba?
$4,000.
Now, do you remember when it was that you started giving Bubba money?
It was only once, and I don't recall.
Now, yesterday you testified and told the jury that Rob settled the case with you and gave you money for your silence. Do you remember telling us that?
That's correct.
Now, I want to, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to look at the government exhibit 928. That's the settlement agreement. Am I correct, between you and Robert?
This is the second one. Yes.
It's the second one?
Yes.
Okay. Now, may I have that back for a second?
Yes.
And just for the record, can you make clear that you previously showed 3500-JP29, not 928?
Yes. I am now showing you the government's exhibit 928. That is it. That is the agreement that you said that you signed. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And who was your attorney at that time?
Susan Loggins and Patrick Condron.
And you testified, you told us yesterday that basically the settlement agreement came from Rob's purchase of your silence. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
I want you to read that agreement. When you get to the part where it says it's for the purchase of your silence, I want you to let me know, okay?
Objection.
Well, overruled. Actually, sustain as to form. Why don't you just put the question to the witness? And then if you have a question you want to ask her, you can do that.
Look at that document. Does it say any place in there that Rob is signing this agreement to purchase your silence?
This is a completely ministerial question for you. Now, what's your question?
May it be read back?
Sure.
No, it does not. Oh. Read paragraph 1 to the jury.
Kelly enters into this confidential settlement agreement and release without any admission of liability or wrongdoing. And Kelly expressly denies engaging in any inappropriate inappropriate or wrongful conduct of any type of or manner. Johnson acknowledges, confirms and represents that at one time she told Kelly that she was 19 years of age. Kelly asserts that Johnson showed him an identification card stating that she was 19 years of age, that she never told him she was under 19 years of age, and never showed him any identification indicating that she was under 19 years of age. Johnson has agreed to substantially reduce her original settlement demand in light of assertions of Kelly. Kelly has agreed to pay the settlement proceeds solely to avoid the cost of litigation.
And you signed that. Am I correct?
I did sign this.
May I have it back? And you signed this after consulting with your attorneys. Am I correct?
I didn't see the agreement before I signed it, but I signed the last page of it.
So you signed something that you didn't see?
That's correct.
Are you telling this jury that you never read it?
I read it after I obtained my file from the attorney, but I never knew what was in the original settlement because my attorneys never let me get it.
So it's your testimony that you went to the office, you didn't go to their office.
That's correct.
And how long were you at the office?
On which day?
On the date that you signed this agreement.
I was there less than an hour.
And before that date, you had been to that office before?
Yes.
How many times?
I was there probably twice before having to sign papers.
And during the times that you were there, those two occasions, did you discuss the settlement?
We talked about the settlement that day, the day that I had to sign the paper.
And before that, you never discussed settlement?
I didn't know anything about it.
But you did learn about it the day that you were there for the settlement. Am I correct?
Yes. A lot of things wasn't discussed with me.
I didn't ask you that. I said that did you learn about it on the date that you went for the settlement?
Yes.
Okay. And before signing it, your attorneys explained it to you?
Yes.
Okay. And you were how old at that time?
At the time, I was 16.
And your mother was there?
Yes, she was.
And your mother signed it? Am I correct?
Yes, she did.
And your mother had been involved with this procedure at the outset? Am I correct?
I don't understand your question.
Wasn't your mother involved with this litigation and helping you? Well, with this process and helping you with this process.
She was present, yes.
Now, after you signed this, you got another lawyer. Am I correct?
That's correct.
How much longer after that did you retain another lawyer?
It was a few months after.
So, a few months after you retained another lawyer?
Yes.
And you retained that other lawyer to sue Rob?
Yes.
And then you retained a third lawyer?
Yes.
And you retained that lawyer as well to sue Rob?
Yes.
Now, there was another settlement. Am I correct? A settlement agreement?
That's correct.
And the one was signed by you as well. Am I correct?
Yes.
And that one was read before you signed it.
Yes. I was allowed to read that one.
And it was explained to you before you signed it.
Yes, it was.
And your mother was with you in the process as well.
No, she wasn't.
So you did this one by yourself?
Yes, I did.
How old were you at that time?
I'm not sure.
Do you remember what year you signed it?
I don't recall the year I signed it.
Well, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Look at this document and see if it refreshes your recollection as to the date.
Oh, he got kicked out.
You signed it, the second agreement.
Hold on a second, y'all. Wait till you come back. So she signed something saying that she was 19, huh?
Mm,
And that
crazy.
and they still
Believed
found
her.
Robert guilty.
How did she get to sue him 2 times? I mean, 2 or 3 times.
Exactly. I don't understand.
After the first settlement, it's more like a blackmail thing than a settlement.
Mm,
I don't get that.
definitely blackmail, isn't it? Definitely.
And the document says she lied and said she was 19.
Yeah, exactly. It's written there.
That's crazy.
It is absolute. It's a joke.
It really is.
She didn't say anything about she was underage. Did it?
Nothing.
Just bear with us a second.
All right.
I see so many errors in this whole case.
Yeah. If her mama wasn't present on the second sign, she was of age.
Her mother, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like mother, like daughter, eh?
Yeah.
With most of them.
Mama had to be there because she was 16.
Yeah.
The second one, her mama wasn't present. She can't remember what year it was.
No.
Yeah, she would know she was probably 18 that year.
Grown, yeah, she was grown. Them lawyers are smart. They ain't gonna let you sign a legal document without if you're underage.
Of course not.
And the jury didn't pick up on none of it. Oh, I'm just so sick and tired of that jury.
I know. Me too. Oh, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Such a shame. It really is. Nobody would believe you, would they? Really? You know, we know what we're talking about, but other people say, no, don't be silly.
I guess we better continue. He doesn't look like he's coming right back. Because I won't see him if I show the screen. So I won't be moving the transcript, guys. I won't be moving it because I got to see when he comes back.
That's okay.
Go ahead, read it, y'all.
Okay.
Look at this document and see if it refreshes your recollection as to the date you signed it, the second agreement. Can you note for the record what document you just showed her, Mr. Canick? 3500-JP29.
So this is familiar?
You've had an opportunity to review the document?
Yes.
Does it refresh your recollection as to the date?
Yes.
That it was signed by you?
Yes.
What was the date?
August of 2013.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 20.
Now, when you would stay at, according to you, Rob's house, you testified that there were times that you had to ask permission to go to the bathroom?
That's correct.
Now, what rooms were you in generally when you were there?
I was mainly in the mirror room and music one.
So, the mirror room has a bathroom, am I correct?
Yes, it does.
And it's your testimony that you had to ask permission to go to the bathroom in the mirror room?
Yes.
And how long, generally, would you have to wait in there before you could get permission?
He's back.
What
Generally,
page? What
it would
page?
be
What number?
fast if I was on his good side,
Number 5.
and he'll get back to me within about 5 minutes.
3 what?
309 and line
Okay.
5.
309 line 5. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. My bad. And what if you were on his bad side?
If I was on his bad side, then I'd have to wait until he would give me permission.
What I'm asking you approximately, how long?
The longest period was 3 days.
So you're in a room, you don't see the man for 3 days, you need to go to the bathroom, and you don't relieve yourself?
That's incorrect.
You just testified and told us that the longest you had to wait was 3 days. Am I correct?
That's correct.
You're in the mirror room.
Yes.
The bathroom is right there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified and told us yesterday about an occasion where you were called to the tour bus by Rob.
What's your question?
You testified and told the jury yesterday that it came to a point in time when you were actually in his home and he was in the tour bus and he called you to the tour bus.
Yes.
And when you got to the tour bus, you testified and told us about 2 people being on the bus. Am I correct?
Yes.
Rob and another woman, correct?
That's correct.
And before that, had you ever been on the tour bus?
No.
Describe the tour bus.
His tour bus was a big black travel bus, and it had red and tan lines on the outside of it.
Now, you had seen that bus on a number of occasions. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So it was no problem with you recognizing that bus. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Now, describe the interior of the bus.
The interior of the bus was tan, and there's a table in there, and he has like long...
Where's the table?
The table is to the left side of the bus when you get on it.
And go ahead, finish responding.
And then there's seating, and there's a bathroom on the bus.
What about bunk beds?
I don't recall seeing bunk beds on the bus.
How many bathrooms on the bus?
I only saw one.
Where was that one?
It was towards like after the table, like towards the middle of the bus.
And then you testified and told us there came a point in time when you got herpes.
Yes.
And you testified that before that, Rob had never mentioned anything to you about herpes. Am I correct?
That about him having herpes?
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, until I find it, I'll move to another area. Now, let's go to the blue t-shirt. You testified and told us yesterday that essentially that Robert assaulted you on the last time you met with him and had a sexual encounter with him.
That's correct.
And you testified and told us that he slapped you with an open hand in your face. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you testified that he choked you out. Am I correct?
That's correct.
That you literally passed out.
That's correct.
And you testified that he also spat in your face.
That's correct.
And then you went on and told us that after all this, you had a sexual encounter with him. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Now, when he slapped you, did you fall?
No, I did not.
He slapped you with a lot of force, though. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have any marks on your body, on your face?
I don't recall.
But he slapped you real hard. Am I correct?
Hard to me, yes.
And he's much bigger than you, correct?
That's correct.
And where specifically on your face were you hit?
I was hit on my right side.
Okay. On your jaw across your lips, or
I was hit across my cheek.
across your cheek? Did it catch any part of your lip?
The side of it.
The side of your lip. Now, with that force, your lip was swollen. Am I correct?
My lips were not swollen.
Cheeks were swollen.
My cheek was stinging, but I'm not sure if it was swollen.
Any blood coming from the lip?
No,
And then what happened first? Did he slap you first or choke you first?
he slapped me first.
And then he choked you.
That's correct.
And when he choked you out, where were you?
I don't understand that question.
Well, when he choked you, you were standing
Yes, I was.
and you were right in front of him.
Yes, I was.
And you said he choked you out until you passed out. Is that correct?
Yes, against the wall.
So when you woke up, you were on the floor. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And he had spat on you before that?
Had he did what?
You said he spit on you, right?
Yes,
Was that before the slap?
that was after I got up and I was on the floor.
You were on the floor, so he reached down and looked down and spat on you,
That's correct.
and it was in your face?
That's correct.
And then after that, you got up and you had sex with him,
That's correct.
and then you went home.
That's correct.
And it was on that ride home you took the train.
Yes, I did.
It's a 2-hour ride.
Yes,
And on that ride on the train, you started thinking about how humiliating it was.
yes,
And you started thinking about, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore.
yes.
You started thinking about, I'm going to a lawyer.
Not at that time, no.
Well, when did you start thinking about going to a lawyer?
I wanted to go to the lawyer like when I got home. I didn't think about it on the train ride.
Okay, but when you got home, you thought about going to a lawyer, right? Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you started gathering your evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
You didn't start.
incorrect. That's incorrect.
You didn't start thinking about, okay, what am I going to tell this lawyer? What evidence I have?
No, I did not.
Well, after you were taking the ride home and he smacked your face, did you take any photos of your face?
I did not.
Did you tell your mom?
Once I got home, yes, I did.
Did you call the cops?
No, we did not.
But you called a civil lawyer.
Yes,
A civil lawyer would try to get you money. Am I correct?
that is correct.
And a criminal lawyer brings you here.
That's
I'm sorry. I don't understand the question.
I'm sorry. The criminal lawyer, criminal case brings you here.
I see.
that's correct.
Now, I want to go to that shirt, the blue t-shirt that you testified about. You said as of that day, the last day you saw Rob, you used that t-shirt, which was yours. Am I correct?
Yes.
You wore that t-shirt over there?
Yes. Yes, I did. Wait. Can you clarify to where is the destination over where?
Well, you said you were at Rob's house. Am I correct?
Yes.
And you said that there came a point in time that you used the t-shirt to wipe off the spit. You used the t-shirt to wipe the spit off your face and the semen off your face. Am I correct?
Yes.
And that was the t-shirt that you wore over there. Am I correct?
Yes.
What did you wear home?
My t-shirt.
The same t-shirt?
Yes.
So you been in that. So you be in that, in control of that t-shirt from the date until you took it to your lawyer. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Now, do you know whether or not anyone ever ran a test to see if your DNA was on that t-shirt to see if that shirt belongs to you?
Not that I know of.
So the only
You got kicked out again.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Susan said gross. So she wore a sperm-filled shirt. Oh.
Ugh.
2-hour train ride home.
Ugh.
That's just
That is gross.
2 hours. 2 hours.
Ugh.
She didn't take no pictures of it. She just hung on to it. Didn't go to the police. Didn't say nothing. I tell you, you can't make some of this stuff up.
Right.
I don't know what kind of jury this was. I tell you.
He's back, y'all. Hold on.
Okay.
what number?
There you go.
What number?
23.
Number 3. That is it.
23.
23.
Oh, 23.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry.
23.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought
Yeah.
you said 3. Another hour. Yes.
No, page
No,
37.
so the only information you need
3
page
what?
317.
317.
Oh, 317. Number
317.
23.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So the only information that we have that this t-shirt belongs to you is your word. Am I correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
If you can find a convenient place, that is it.
Oh, that was me. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, your lunches are here. So I'm going to excuse you for lunch. Please, again, I know I say it all the time, but I still mean it. Do not talk about the case at all. Do not look up anything about the case. We'll see you back here at 2:15 and have a good lunch.
All rise.
Okay, everybody can have a seat.
Can we let the witness leave, Your Honor?
Yes, I keep forgetting. Go ahead. All right, just in terms of scheduling, how much longer do you have?
I thought it would be faster, but it's about an hour.
Another hour?
Yes.
You told me when we broke before that you had an hour and a half.
You know I'm horrible at this, Your Honor.
All right, but we have a witness who is ready to deliver a baby at any moment. And so I'm going to ask you to be economical or more economical in your examination of the witness.
Will do, Your Honor.
I think it's in everybody's interest to get this witness finished. And to the extent there's any redirect, I expect the same thing. So I know you can't determine how much redirect you have, but think about it. Another question that I just have for you all is generally, is there seems to be a number of exhibits that you seem to agree can go into evidence. If you can agree on them in evidence without the need to lay a foundation, that will also move things along. As interesting as it is to hear foundation questions, if there's no dispute about particular pieces of evidence, let's just agree on them. All right, we'll return at 2:15.
Your Honor, can we raise some of the housekeeping matters, or do you want to wait?
Yes, go ahead.
It has come to our attention that Mr. Farinella issued a tweet. I don't know if that's the proper use on Tuesday of this week that, in our opinion, is a violation of Local Rule 23.1 and indirect.
What does the tweet say?
Excuse me?
What does it say?
The tweet says, after all, the RICO enterprise is based on a series of independent relationships and events that the government is trying to patch together like different types of fabric and trying to pass it off as silk. And the rule provides.
I'm familiar with the rule. Did you tweet, Mr. Farinella?
Yes, Your Honor.
Why did you do that? Didn't I specifically instruct you not to make remarks to the media? And in keeping with that rule, are you familiar with the rule, that local rule?
Yes, Your Honor.
Why did you do that then?
I did not think that the tweet I did not think the tweet violated the rule, Your Honor.
It violates the rule. Do not do it again.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Yes, it's two quick matters. The government wishes to call one witness by video conference, such that she will testify from the courthouse in Chicago. The defense has no objection. And if we can set it up, does Your Honor have any problem with that?
I don't, as long as everybody agrees to it.
And then the last matter is there have been requests by the media for several pieces of evidence that were entered into evidence yesterday to include the defendant's government exhibit 1, which is a photograph of the defendant.
I'm just going to cut you off just to say the evidence, the items that have been admitted into evidence can obviously be shared with media outlets, except to the extent there is non-public information in them. So as long as they are admitted into evidence, I understand someone from your office took it upon himself to make those arrangements. As I said to you before, that is going a little out of his lane. These are court exhibits, but if there is something set up for you to do that, you can use it.
Okay, but just to be clear, we haven't shared anything.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
But if there's a request, in the olden days, we would lay out the exhibits and the media could come and look at them. Whatever form it is that you want to share it with them is fine.
And just lastly, there will be some exhibits that the government will enter into evidence that we will object to sharing more publicly, but we can address those as they come.
I think that's fine. All right. Have a good lunch.
All rise. Court.
While we're getting Mr. Kelly, I'd like to see counsel a sidebar.
Sidebar conference held on the record in the presence of the court and Ms. Geddes and Mr. Canick.
Man, they redacted a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
3:30.
Let's get the witness. Do you want, when do you want me to give her that instruction? Now?
I think so that we don't have to take a break between when he's finished.
That's fine. Before we bring in the jury, I want to tell the witness, Mr. Canick has a few more questions for you. Then the government is going to ask you some questions. I know that they gave you some instruction not to talk about certain things, including the nature of the trial that took place in 2008. But you may answer any questions that the lawyers ask you, okay?
Okay.
That's lifted. I mean, unless I sustain an objection during the course of the questioning, but it's okay for you to answer questions on that subject, okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. Let's get the jury.
All rise.
You may be seated. All right. Well, back, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to resume. Mr. Canick, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The witness is reminded she's still under oath.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good morning.
I want to visit that party, the first party you went to, for less than 30 minutes, one last time. Now, at that party, there was a DJ. Am I correct?
I don't recall a DJ being there.
Okay. Now, you were asked earlier by the government, what, if anything, that Mr. Kelly told you about herpes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And your response is that he told you nothing about herpes. Am I correct?
He told me nothing about him having herpes.
Now, you testified and told us earlier that you had several meetings with the government. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And when you had these meetings, there were agents and assistant U.S. State's attorney. Am I correct?
Yes.
Now, prior to the briefing and asking you questions, they advised you that making a false statement or telling a lie to the federal officials is a crime. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And they told you that on numerous indications. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you swore here earlier today to tell the truth.
That's correct.
And you swore yesterday to tell the truth.
That's correct.
And then you recall being interviewed by the agents on February 27, 2019.
I'm not sure of the exact date.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure.
JP-2. I direct your attention to the top of the left-hand portions of the details of investigation and see if that refreshes your recollection as to where or not you had an interview with the government on that particular day.
Yes.
When you say yes, after having reviewed the document, does that refresh your recollection that you had an interview with the government on February 27, 2019?
Yes.
And on that date, they gave you ammunition that making a false statement, that making a false statement to the is a federal offense. Am I correct?
Yes.
Now, when they ask you about herpes, my client on that date, you told them one day Kelly confided in me and informed her daddy's not doing too good. Have you ever had herpes? Have you ever heard of herpes? That he further informed you that a few people close to him having it, and it had been traveling around since the late 90s. He went on to explain that herpes was a virus. Even though it was curable, you cannot get rid of it. And according to you, he instructed you to look down there to make sure it wasn't traveling. And that you stated to the government that he only opened up to people about herpes that he really trusts. And that you recall the conversation took place around July 2009. And that he further, according to you, instructed you to lay down. He visibly and physically inspected your vagina with his finger, and that he informed you that you could tell anyone that he contracted genital herpes from him. Do you remember telling the government that on February 27, 2019?
Most of it, yes.
But you just testified under oath that he told you nothing about herpes.
This was during my outbreak, when I found out I had it.
No, that's not my question. My question is, you came in here yesterday, took an oath to tell this jury the truth. And when you were asked by the government, what did my client tell you about herpes? You said he told you nothing. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes,
But now, what I just read to you, you told the government a total different story. Am I correct?
what you read, I don't recall.
Oh, I see. Now, you did testify and told us earlier that prior to coming in and giving testimony to this jury, and you and the government went over these questions and that they put to you at least 3 times.
Objection.
Sustained as to form.
You and the government went over the questions they put to you. Am I correct?
Yes,
More than once?
yes.
More than twice?
I'm not sure. It was more than twice.
Uh-oh, he's kicked out again.
Now, I think you testified yesterday as well that there came a point in time that you started after you sued Robert and got a settlement that you gave him monies back. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes,
And I think you told us that you did that because you felt bad about what was happening, what you guys have been going through.
yes.
Okay, but you said you sued him 3 other times. Am I correct?
That's incorrect.
2 other times.
That's correct.
And after the first lawsuit, how much time elapsed before you sued him a second time?
A few months.
And that was the only other time you sued him?
No, it wasn't.
There was another time. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, and how much time elapsed from the second to the next time?
3 years.
But you felt bad about what you were going through. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And now you also testified and told the jury that you, even after the lawsuit, you wanted to continue to be his friend.
That's correct.
In fact, you wanted to go back with him, according to you.
That's correct.
In fact, according to you, you wanted to just get the relationship back in gear again.
That's correct.
Now, when were you hoping to get the relationship back in gear again? Was that after the first lawsuit, but before the second?
Yes.
And when you sued him the second time, were you still hopeful after the second time to get the relationship jump started again?
Yes.
In fact, as you sit here today, you're still hopeful of getting a relationship with him. Am I correct?
That's incorrect.
When did you stop hoping and wanting to get in a relationship with him?
I'm not sure of the date.
Was it 2017?
Yep.
Was it
It was
2017,
it was before then.
2016?
It was before then. I'm just not sure of the year.
Okay. So I asked you this morning about that, about the time that you went to Mr. Kelly's house for a party and whether or not you encountered security. Do you remember me asking you that?
Yes.
And you told us that basically what you did is that you called Bubba, he met you, and just escorted you through. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Well, again, you had interviews with the government where you discussed these details. Am I correct?
Yes.
And do you recall, or isn't it a fact, that you told the government on February 27, 2009, in that same interview that was just referenced, that when you arrived at Mr. Kelly's front gate, security asked for your names? That's what you told the government on that date. Am I correct?
Yes.
So you didn't tell them that when you got to the gate, you had already called Bubba and Bubba came to meet you. You didn't tell them that, right? You didn't tell him that, right?
She stopped.
She's muted. She's muted.
Okay.
Oh, is she?
I didn't hear that. Sorry. I don't recall.
But you now admit that you were encountered by security. They stopped you. Am I correct?
It wasn't like actually security that stopped us.
I'm just confused. Is Bubba security?
No.
Oh, this is somebody else?
Yes.
Bubba, he plays a security role.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to clarify.
Bubba owns a tattoo parlor. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Bubba is a friend of Robert Kelly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You are telling this jury under oath that Bubba was a part of the security?
Yes. Bubba is part of his security team.
Okay. Now, so when you told the jury earlier this morning that you had no encounter with security, what you are telling us is that because Bubba, who according to you is part of the security, but you don't view him as security, so it was fair for you to say that you had no encounter with security.
Objection.
Sustained.
I confused myself with that one, Judge. Now, when you told the jury this morning that you did not have an encounter with the security, you meant that because you had Bubba, who was part of the security, to come get you?
That's correct.
Now, tell the jury why, when you were interviewed by the government, you told them that the security came, that security stopped you, and asked you for your name.
I don't recall.
Now, I'm not asking you if you recall anything. I'm asking you to explain something. Why, if Bubba was a part of the security and you did not view him as security, why would you tell the government in the meeting that when you arrived at the front gate, security asked you for your name?
Objection.
Do you remember why you told the government that?
I don't recall.
But you would agree with me that Bubba knew your name, right?
Yes. Bubba knew my name.
So you got...
Let the witness finish.
Bubba knew my name.
So Bubba would not have asked you for your name. Am I correct?
That's correct.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you by yourself at this time?
No, he was with Kilnia.
I see. Go ahead.
According to you, what you told us the other day is that Bubba invited you and Kiana. Am I correct?
She's muted again.
Line 20. Fill in.
Bubba invited me and I was with Kiana.
Bubba did not invite you and Kiana?
Me and Kiana was together.
When Bubba extended the invitation, he did not invite you and Kiana?
That's correct. He invited me and I was with Kiana.
So, during your interview with the government, isn't it a fact that you told the government in and around May 2009 that you formerly met Kelly through one of his friends identified as Jermaine? At that time, you were approximately 16 years old, and you identified Jermaine as Jermaine Maxey, also known as Bubba, and you stated that.
Objection.
Well, do you have a question to put to the witness?
Yes.
Rather than just reading the whole thing.
Isn't it a fact that you told the government that you stated that you first met Maxey through MySpace, and after communicating with Maxey, he invited you and your friend to personally meet up? Do you remember telling the government that?
Yes.
And then you made plans to meet at the tattoo shop.
That's correct.
And after making arrangements at the tattoo shop, Maxey contacted you and invited you and your friend to attend one of Kelly's parties instead.
That's correct.
So he invited you and your friend.
He invited me and I was with my friend. So in speaking terms, he invited us. I'm saying it's the person I'm with. So if I'm invited, I'm bringing them with me.
Isn't it a fact that you told the government during the meeting on February 27, 2019, that Maxey contacted you and invited you
Objection.
and your friend to attend one of Kelly's parties instead?
Overruled. That means you can answer.
Okay.
That's okay.
That's correct.
When you gave testimony here under oath, you testified to the question that what led you to go into the defendant's house in May of 2009. And your answer was, we were supposed to be going to a tattoo parlor and ended up getting invited to his home by Bubba. He invited us to the party. That's what you testified to under oath.
That's correct.
Now, you testified earlier and told us that about this assault, according to you, that Robert inflicted upon you, the last time the two of you got together for sexual encounter. Do you remember telling us about that?
Yes, I do.
You told us that after the assault, according to you, that he asked you to engage in sex then as well. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And after you had some initial sex, he told you to put on some heels so you can have intercourse. Am I correct?
That's correct.
That's incorrect. What did he tell you about the heels?
The heels are the heels that he wanted me to wear whenever we had sex.
And he didn't ask you, according to you?
He asked me about the heels, and that's when I told him that I'd left them at my uncle's house.
And he asked you the heels for a, and he asked you about the heels for a purpose of having intercourse. Am I correct?
I'm assuming that's what he wanted.
Right. But when you spoke to the government in one of those interviews you had, you told them that the same day Robert was having a party and you told him, Robert, that you needed to grab the heels for the party. Do you remember telling the government that?
Yes,
And you told the government that you left and never returned.
that's correct.
So when you told the government about this during that interview, you told them that you grabbed the heels for the party and not for sex. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Incidentally, do you remember telling someone that in connection with this case or this incident that you drove and you drove by Rob's house over 30 times?
No, I do not recall that.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to the highlighted portion. See if it refreshes your recollection that you told some of the fact that you drove by Rob's home.
What document are you showing her?
JP15. Yes or no? Do that refreshes your recollection that you told someone that you drove past Rob's studio to see if his tour bus was there over 30 occasions?
When did this happen?
The document or the 30 occasions?
The 30 occasions.
About?
Go ahead. Does that refresh your memory? She's muted again.
It does not.
When you say withdrawn, now, yes or no, are you familiar? May we have a brief sidebar?
Sure. Uh-oh, dropped out.
The following conference was held outside of the hearing of the jury. Again. I'm almost done. So in this interview, this post interview of the polygraph, because I don't want it to be an argument that by asking of the name of the polygrapher that I'm opening the door to the polygraph.
I think you asked her if this refreshes her memory about whether she said this, and then she said it doesn't. I don't think it matters to whom she said it.
Okay.
I think that's probably, is this before any of this happened?
After. This is after the lawsuit is settled and referring to.
I see.
She's still stalking. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I'm not accepting that characterization, but I understand what you're saying.
Do you remember having a video recording done as you waited out by Rob's home?
I do.
Do you remember when it was that you were waiting outside of his home?
I do not.
Were you waiting alone?
I'm not sure.
What were you waiting in? Were you just standing around waiting, or were you in a car?
A car.
How old were you?
I don't recall.
Was this before January 10th, January 2010?
I'm not sure.
Let me show you a document and see if it refreshes your recollection. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
If you look at the bottom portion underlined in red, thank God. We're on 348, line 20.
If you look at the bottom portion, underlined in red, see if it refreshes your recollection as to whether or not this was before or after your initial lawsuit.
I'm not sure.
What page are you showing her?
54.
Reading that doesn't look familiar.
When you were waiting out by Rob's house, you were in a vehicle, were you not?
Objection.
I think you have to refer her to my recollection is the witness said she didn't recall that.
I'm going to get to that.
Let's do it with the proper question.
You testified earlier that you recall making a video recording as you sat in front of Rob's house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When you sat in front of Rob's house, how long was it that you sat there?
I'm not sure.
Was it in hours?
I'm not sure how long it was.
Was it more than 5 minutes?
I'm not sure.
What were you waiting for?
I don't know.
You drove from somewhere to go to his home. Am I correct?
That's correct.
You parked your car in front of his home. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you waited there. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you're telling this jury that you did that, you took these steps, but you don't know why.
It was, yes. That's what I'm telling you.
Did you have an occasion where you would leave your house and go and park in front of anyone else's house and sit there?
Objection.
Yes.
I haven't ruled on the objection. Sustained.
Now, when you sat there, you were concerned as to whether or not Rob had moved. Am I correct?
I don't recall.
You don't recall as you sat there telling other persons that you wondered whether or not he had moved.
I do not recall.
You don't recall telling other persons that you had been sitting there for a while and hadn't seen him.
I don't recall.
You don't recall telling the other persons.
Objection.
Overruled.
I should just walk up to him. You're Rob. You're Robert Kelly. I'm hoping his manager is not around. His manager will get in the way.
Did you show her this already and asked her if she recollected it rather than reading it? Do you want to refresh her recollection? See if it refreshes her recollection.
Sure. To the bottom portion.
I don't recall this.
Just 1 second, Your Honor. I'm looking to see if there's anything further.
Sure.
You testified us earlier. You testified us earlier. You dropped in fact recall driving from some place and sitting in front of his home. Do you remember how many times you actually did that?
I do not recall.
But you don't recall it.
I recall at least once. Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Are you ready to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Just 2 questions, Your Honor.
You already said you're done.
Just kidding. Go ahead. In your book, you testified you didn't embellish anything when you wrote the book about your experiences in connection with these facts, and you told us about.
Objection.
Did you testify that you didn't make anything up in the book that you wrote?
Yes.
Go ahead.
In the book, you wrote that during the trial that you sat through in 2008, that Rob blew a kiss at you, correct?
That's correct.
Did that happen?
Yes, that did.
It happened? He didn't know you, right?
He did not know me.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Go ahead, Ms. Geddes. Can I see the lawyers on the side without the court reporter? know what she get ready to say.
Mhm.
Okay.
On cross-examination, I believe earlier today, defense counsel asked you about certain telephone calls that were stored in your telephone in Government's Exhibit 210 and are reflected on 210 U, T, S, and R. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And one of the questions that defense counsel asked was whether or not the date of these telephone calls, January 23rd, was after the last time that you saw the defendant at his house. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
As you sit here today, you know the date that you last saw the defendant at his residence.
I do not.
You testified, however, that shortly after you last saw the defendant, you retained a lawyer, correct?
That is correct.
And you said that happened in January of 2010, right?
That's correct.
As part of that, you prepared this journal that was reflected in 3500 JP9, which I'm showing you.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled, of
You
course.
would.
Jerhonda.
Mike is muted.
That's correct.
I'm going to turn to,
I don't think this is in evidence, is it?
it's not in evidence yet.
Can I see the parties on the side for a minute?
Sidebar conference held.
Are you planning to admit it?
I'm planning to show her this to one, see if it refreshes her recollection as to the date on which she last saw him. Then I do want to have her read this as a prior consent statement. I think her credibility has been significantly attacked both in opening and on cross-examination. She said the exact same thing 4 days after when she retained a lawyer as to what happened on January 23rd. I think she should be permitted to say that she said the same thing 4 days after it happened.
Do you object to that?
I don't see what is the prior consistent statement.
Get it? Or hers, her mic is muted.
Oh, prior consistent or inconsistent?
You're offering it as a prior consistent statement. Get it?
It's muted again.
Okay, we have issues with this screen. Yes.
I'll do that.
Yes,
Have a nice day.
to rebuke the claim of and to rehabilitate the witness, both.
What is the prior consistent statement?
January 23rd of 2010, she went to Rob's house. Rob slapped me 3 times, said I lied to him. It's not going to be an open hand next time.
I'm not going to object. Let it in.
I'm showing you the last page. I'll show the witness only the last page of 3500 JP9, the second to the last page. Do you see what is shown in JP9?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to direct your attention to the last entry. You can read those 2 lines, then I'll turn it over to the next page. Can I turn it? Witness reviews document. Can I turn it over?
Yes.
Witness reviewing document.
Yes.
Does looking at those 2 pages of 3500 JP9 refresh your recollection as to the last date that you saw the defendant at his residence?
Yes.
When was it?
January 23rd.
Of 2010?
Yes.
Can you please read to the jury Your entry for January 23rd of 2010. Take a moment.
It says, I went to Rob's house. Rob called me a silly bitch. Rob slapped me 3 times. He said if I lie to him again, it's not going to be an open hand next time. He spit in my face and in my mouth. And he slapped me in my face again for the 4th time. He choked me during the argument. I had sex with him. I had oral sex with him. I became fed up with him and went home and confessed. Can I have a bathroom break?
Yes, let's take our afternoon break, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take the witness out first. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Don't talk about the case at all. We'll see you in a few minutes. One thing I want everyone to keep on their radar. Miss Green will correct me if I'm wrong. Alternate number 3. Let me see if I have this. Alternate number 3 can't start a new job until. She doesn't start until the 23rd, but she's supposed to start orientation on the 23rd and won't get paid if she doesn't do the orientation. And if she doesn't get that, she also won't have any benefits. Apparently, her husband doesn't have benefits. There are many layers. I think I told you before there were some issues about picking kids up from school also. But you can, we don't have to decide that right now, but talk amongst yourself, see if you agree to excuse or what day is the 23rd.
Monday.
We'll talk about it at the end of the day.
You may be seated. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
The witness is reminded she's still under oath. On cross-examination, do you recall being asked a question about where in Government's Exhibit 928 it said that your silence was being purchased? Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Did you draft Government's Exhibit 928? Objection.
Overruled.
No.
And how old you were when Government's Exhibit 928? Objection.
Overruled.
Was drafted.
I was 16.
And because you were 16, was your mother also required to sign this agreement?
Yes, she was.
Is that her signature?
Yes, it is.
I'm showing one of the pages of 928. This is in evidence. May I publish that to the jury?
Yes.
Where my finger is pointing, is that your mother's signature?
Yes, it is.
Again, what was your understanding of your obligations under this agreement?
That I wasn't supposed to talk about it with anyone. I was supposed to remain silent and keep everything confidential.
And in exchange for that obligation, what did you get?
I was supposed to get 1.5 million settlement.
Dang.
I'd like to direct your attention to paragraph 3. Do you see paragraph 3?
It's a bit blurry, but I can see it.
Can you see that now?
Yes, I can.
Can you read paragraph 3 for the jury, please?
Johnson and Kelly, Susan E. Logan, Susan E. Loggins, Associates, PC, and Logan's firm expressly acknowledge and agree that the following of highly confidential nature, and that Johnson and Kelly, Susan Loggins, Susan E. Loggins and Associates PC, and Loggins' firm and anyone acting on their behalf under the control or in their employ will not disclose nor discuss in any fashion with anyone the following items.
Can you continue and read for not to be discussed? Just before you do that, the first name up there says Johnson. Who is Johnson?
Johnson is me.
That was your maiden name?
Yes.
Can you now please read to the jury the items that you were not to discuss as provided in paragraph 3 that you just read?
A. The existence of a relationship, if any, between Johnson and Kelly. B. The fact that there was a dispute between Johnson and Kelly. C. The allegations underlying the dispute between Johnson and Kelly. D. The fact that the dispute has been terminated. And E. Any terms of this agreement provided, however, that this provision does not prohibit any disclosures of proceeds to the proper taxing authorities or the allegations underlying the dispute when ordered by a court, competent jurisdiction, or as otherwise required by law.
On cross-examination, you were also asked about how you were able to attend 2 years from April of 2008 until May of 2009. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, I do.
When was the first day that you encountered the defendant?
April Fool's Day of 2008.
How old were you then?
I was 14.
When was your birthday?
April 19th.
When did you turn 15?
April 19th, 2008.
18 days after you met the defendant.
That's correct.
When did you turn 16?
April 19th, 2009.
When did you meet the defendant? When did you first go to the defendant's house?
It was May of 2009.
So fair to say there were about 13 months that passed between April 1st of 2008 and May of 2009 when you met the defendant.
That's correct.
Nothing further.
Any recross is limited to what came out on redirect.
Yes. The journal that you just testified to on redirect, your lawyers asked you to prepare that journal. Am I correct?
That's correct.
They asked you after you had gone to their office to consult with them. Am I correct?
Mr. Koenig, can you take your mask off?
Thank you. And when you were putting the entries into the journal, you were not doing it to be contemporaneous. Am I correct? With those incidents that you put in there.
Rephrase your question.
When you made the entries into the journal, you made those entries well after the items that you had placed in the journal. Am I correct?
I don't understand your question.
May I have the journal? What was the date that you prepared this journal?
I'm not sure of the date I prepared the journal.
You have an entry from May 30th, 2009.
Objection.
Overruled.
You have an entry from May 30th, 2009. You didn't prepare the journal on May 30th, 2009. Am I correct?
I don't recall exactly when I prepared the journal.
Well, had you seen the lawyers before May 30th, 2009?
No, I did not.
But there is an entry in the journal. Am I correct?
I didn't see the journal.
You testified and told a jury a short time ago.
I didn't see what the page you're talking about.
I think what Mr. Kennett is asking you is, did you prepare that journal after you met the lawyers?
Yes, I did.
So that was after all of the things that you told us about that happened in 2009, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't prepare the journal right after it happened, correct?
That's correct.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you were asked to prepare this journal by your attorneys, they told you to be accurate with the information. Am I correct?
That's correct.
In the journal, you told the attorneys that Robert slapped you 3 times. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And eventually a 4th time.
That's correct.
You told the lawyers, at least you put in the journal, that he choked you.
That's correct.
You didn't put it in there that he choked you out.
That's correct.
You put absolutely nothing in the journal about the supposed t-shirt that you found, withdrawn, about the supposed t-shirt that you had that you used to wipe the semen off and spit from your face.
That's correct.
Nothing. I think that's it, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Very briefly. On recross examination, you were asked about your meeting with a lawyer. Why did you go to the civil lawyer rather than seeking another avenue?
Objection.
Sustained.
On recross, you were also asked about the t-shirt that you testified earlier about that you used to wipe off the defendant's semen from your face. Do you recall that?
Yes,
What did you do with that t-shirt?
I gave that t-shirt to my attorney.
And that was your attorney's at the Loggins law firm?
Yes,
Nothing further.
Anything else?
Yes. 1.
You're kidding, right? All right, 1.
When did you give that t-shirt to your attorneys?
I don't recall the exact date.
Thank you.
All right, the witness can step down. Are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, the government calls Garrick Amsco.
Can you tell me the witness' last name again?
Yes, it's Amsco. A-M-S-C-H-L. Raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record. Can
Kenny?
Yeah,
You do, Gary, that's a guy.
Oh, Garrett. Oh, Garrett Amscale.
okay. Called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, affirmed by the courtroom deputy, was examined and testified as follows. What do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer.
Where?
The village of Olympia Fields in Illinois.
How long have you been a police officer with the village of Olympia Fields?
Almost 24 years.
Can I interrupt? I forgot to give my instructions. I'm sure they won't be necessary, but I just want to remind you, we have a court reporter that is taking down everything that you say. Try not to talk over whoever is asking you questions. And if there's a question that isn't clear, just let me know. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Go ahead.
What is your call sign with the Olympia Fields Police Department?
4423.
What is a call sign? I probably should have started with that.
It's a radio designated number.
I'd like to direct your attention to June 13th of 2009. Were you working that day?
I was.
Do you recall what shift you were working that day?
Afternoons,
And what are the hours of the afternoon shift?
4 p.m. to midnight.
I want to direct your attention to 10:53, approximately 10:53 p.m. that evening. What did you do that evening?
I was dispatched to a call. I was it was an assistant. It was an assist other agency for Country Club Hills Police Department looking for a missing juvenile.
Slow down a little.
I was dispatched to a call for another agency. It was for Country Club Hills Police Department, also in Illinois, for a missing juvenile.
And you indicated that you were dispatched to a call. What does that mean?
Meaning I received a call over the radio.
And were you told to go somewhere?
Yes.
Where were you told to go?
1 Morrow's Lane.
Is that also in Olympia Fields?
Yes, it is.
I'm showing the witness what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 502A. Do you recognize what's shown in 502A?
I do.
What is that?
That is the front gate of 1 Morrow's Lane in Olympia Fields.
And is that the location where you were dispatched to on June 13th of 2009?
It is.
And you testified that you were going to look for a missing juvenile. Did you learn the name of the individual you were going to look for?
Dominique.
And I'm showing the witness and the jury only what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 69A. Underneath the photograph shown in 69A, is that the name of the Dominique that you were, who was listed as the missing juvenile?
It is.
Do you recall what happened when you responded to 1 Merrill's Lane?
I was met by security.
And what happened when you were met by security?
Security referred me to a phone call for the business manager for Mr. Kelly.
And by Mr. Kelly, who are you referring to?
Robert Sylvester Kelly.
What was Robert Sylvester Kelly's association with 1 Merrill's Lane?
He was the owner of the residence.
And you testified that someone at security referred you to the business manager. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you learn the name of the business manager?
I did not.
Did you learn the telephone number of the business manager?
I did.
As you sit here today, do you recall that telephone number?
I do not.
I'm showing the witness what's been marked as for identification as Government's Exhibit 3500-GA1. And I'm showing you page 4 of that. Does that refresh your recollection as to the telephone number of the business manager?
It does.
What was that telephone number?
312-659-1040.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with the business manager after security referred you to him?
I did.
What happened?
The business manager advised that the juvenile was 17 and that he had asked her to leave the prior week.
What, if anything, did the business manager say about Mr. Kelly?
I'm sorry.
Objection. Let me rephrase. Withdraw that question. Did you have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kelly that day?
No.
What, if anything, now I'm going back to my question. What, if anything, did Mr. Kelly's business manager, the business manager that you spoke with, say about Mr. Kelly? Objection, Your Honor. And before,
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we have a brief sidebar on that?
Okay.
sidebar held outside the hearing of the jury. Oh, I'm missing a page.
Page 3,
375, you don't have it?
line 3.
Your Honor, the business manager as an employee of Mr. Kelly. He was operating in his capacity as the business manager for the defendant, and the government's position is that a statement of an employee as part of his...
The enterprise?
Excuse me?
Is it part of the enterprise? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's in addition to that, it's a co-conspirator statement, but I don't think you even have to get there because under 801, it's also a statement of an employee. He was working as the business manager and he was answering the phone call in his capacity as the business manager. And it's an employee, like a statement as an agent of the defendant.
What's the statement? I don't know what it is.
It's going to say that...
We don't know the statement. There's also the foundation.
How did you not know the statement?
Can I just say what the statement is?
I just read some stuff in Discovery, so it's definitely there.
Right. No. I mean, he relates what the conversation was.
Mr. Kelly advised that he had not seen her. He spoke with Mr. Kelly, who advised him he had previous contact. And why it's relevant is because I want to establish that the defendant was aware that the police officers went to 1 Merrill's Lane in search of Dominique to corroborate what Miss Pace just testified about.
Do you object?
Well, the only issue I have is that the foundation as to who was the officer who was speaking to. We only have a phone number. There's been no link up to the phone numbers as to the business manager is. And throughout the discovery, there are a number of different business managers. So there is no specific delineation as to who he was on the phone with.
Can you tell him who it was? Do you know who it was?
Yes, I do. It's Daryl McDavid. And there's already been testimony about Daryl McDavid in his role.
I think that clears it up. Okay, great. Go ahead.
What, if anything, did the business manager to whom you spoke say about Mr. Kelly?
Oh,
that's you.
Because I'm not quite sure I understand the question. That he had spoken to Mr. Kelly and advised that she had not been seen or had contact with the juvenile?
Who said that they had spoken to Mr. Kelly?
The business manager.
So yes. So the business manager. You testified that the business manager told you that he had spoken with Mr. Kelly. And what did he say Mr. Kelly said?
That he learned it the previous week, that the juvenile was 17 and that he had asked her to leave. And just to be clear, who said that he learned last week that the individual you identified as Dominique had been found last week was 17 years of age and was asked to leave? The business manager.
And what did the business manager say about Mr. Kelly?
That he had not had contact with her since that time.
That Mr. Kelly had not had contact with Dominique since that time. Is that correct?
Correct. Objection.
Overruled.
Nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
Okay, go ahead.
So the government has shown you what's been marked as exhibit 3500-GA1. And that consists of the report that you prepared that day, correct?
It's actually not technically a police report. It's the CAD notes, the computer aided dispatch notes for the calls that were generated.
Okay. And in those notes, it does indicate, and you're prepared these notes, right?
These notes were probably prepared via radio by the dispatcher. The dispatcher typed them into the computer as I dictated.
Okay. But the source is you.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'll point to the page. I apologize. Page 4 of the report.
Is there a number on it? The 3500 material?
Yes. Government's 3500-GA1.
All right. Do you want him to look at it?
Yes.
Can we put that up? I guess your side should be doing it, but do you mind putting it up?
Sure.
Thanks.
Page 4.
Yes, please. So, on page 4, it's true that you indicated that you received a call regarding Dominique, but found out last week she was, forgive me, apologize.
Just slow down a little bit, please.
Okay.
Thanks. And do you want this displayed to everybody?
It's not in evidence.
It's not in evidence? Okay.
So, in the report, it doesn't indicate that you had requested any additional investigation in the matter, right?
That's correct.
And it was you didn't request any search warrants with regards to this particular complaint, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, that this complaint came from the person that you were looking for mothers, right?
It actually came from Country Club Hills Police Department was the request. They had requested us to initiate the contact.
So it is, in fact, that when you were concluded with Mr. Kelly's business manager, you at that point left the scene.
That's correct.
And it was at that point you determined that there were no further investigations required.
It was referred to Country Club Hills for their follow-up. It was their case initially.
But in terms of the initial imminency, or you had closed it out for your perspective?
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you so much. You can step down. Do you have another witness to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The government calls Chris Mcgrath. That's going to be you again, can it?
Oh.
Do you want me to do one, or is that okay? You can do it.
Raise your right hand for me, please. Stand.
Witness.
Stand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the answers you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State your name for the record.
Chris Mcgrath.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. You can remove your mask. And just a couple of things regarding your testimony. Our court reporters take down everything the witnesses say. So if you could make sure you don't speak too quickly, and then if you could also just wait until whoever is asking you the question finishes before you start to answer. That way, we're not talking over one another, and it doesn't make the court reporter's job too hard. And finally, if you don't understand a question or want to have it repeated, just let me know, okay?
Yes.
Is the witness microphone working? Just tap it. Yes, so speak into it. All right.
Can it?
Witness.
Testing.
Perfect.
Test.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
Called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, affirmed by the court deputy, was examined and testified as follows. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Did you receive a subpoena to testify here today?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up too and use the microphone.
I'm sorry. Did you receive a subpoena to testify here today?
Yes, I did.
Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a physician,
What kind of physician are you?
internal medicine and allergy and immunology.
Where do you practice?
Chicago, Illinois.
I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 1. Do you recognize the person in this photograph?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
Robert Kelly.
Do you personally know Robert Kelly?
Yes, I do.
In what capacity?
As his physician,
Do you know him in any other ways as well?
socially.
Do you see Robert Kelly in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Can you point him out and indicate and identify him by an item of his clothing that he's wearing?
The man over there in the blue suit and blue tie.
Indicating the defendant.
Now you indicated you were his primary care physician, correct?
Correct.
Can you briefly describe your medical training to the jury?
I'm trained in internal medicine, which is a 3-year program after medical school. Internal medicine residency, that was followed by a 2-year allergy and immunology fellowship. Both were at Northwestern University, preceded by medical school at the University of Iowa.
And do you practice in both internal medicine and allergy and immunology?
Yes, I do.
And are you board certified
Yes, I am.
in both of those specialties?
Yes, I am both specialties.
Generally speaking, what is internal medicine?
It's primary care with the knowledge studies also in the subspecialties of internal medicine such as allergy, immunology, infections, excuse me. Infectious diseases. It- somebody take that.
Endocrinology, gastrology, cardiology, and others. And does that include diagnosing sexually transmitted diseases,
Yes, it does.
including herpes?
Yes, it does.
Now, following your medical training, did you open a practice or did you buy a practice?
Yes, I bought a practice.
And around when was
1984, June.
and where was the practice located?
The practice was originally at 100 East Ohio from 1984 to 1988. And then in 1988, I moved the practice about 4 blocks away to 500 North Michigan Avenue.
And is that all in Chicago, Illinois?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And do you still practice at 500 North Michigan Avenue?
Yes, I do.
Aside from your medical practice, do you hold any other positions?
Yes. I also have a teaching faculty position at Northwestern University Medical School. That's a professor of medicine where I work with allergy, immunology, fellow residents, and medical students at the Northwestern Medical School.
I am showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 48. Is this just a photo of you, Dr. Mcgrath?
Yes, it is.
I move to admit Government Exhibit 48.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
All right, that's in evidence.
Now, how far along were you? Now, for how long were you the defendant's primary care physician?
Approximately 25 years.
And approximately when did you first meet the defendant?
1994.
And how did you meet him?
I was asked to see him by his accountant, Daryl McDavid, as a favor.
And how did you know Daryl McDavid at the time?
He was an internal medicine patient.
I am showing you what's in evidence. I am showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 12. Do you recognize the person in this photograph?
Yes, I do.
Who do you recognize it to be?
Daryl McDavid.
I move to admit Government Exhibit 12.
No objection, Judge. Okay, that's in evidence.
May we publish it?
Yes.
To the jury, please. Thank you. Now, at some point, did you receive a subpoena from the government for the defendant's medical records?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, did you do after receiving that subpoena?
I called an attorney and had them copied and numbered.
You had the records copied and numbered?
Yes, I had the records copied and numbered.
And were those records then provided to the government?
Yes, they were.
And what kinds of records did you provide to the government with?
The original paper records, pre-electronic records. So from about 1994 to 2011 was paper records. And then the rest are electronic generated records from 2011 to the present.
So fair to say a copy of both your paper file with respect to the defendant as well as your electronic records.
That's correct.
And how were those files maintained at your office?
In a secured medical file drawers.
For the paper records, you mean?
For the paper records, and the rest are through e-clinical work, so electronic health records.
And were those records kept in the regular course of your business?
Yes, they were.
And as a regular practice of your business?
Yes, as a regular practice of my business.
I am showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 237. Prior to your testimony here today, did you have an opportunity to review Government Exhibit 237?
Yes, I did.
Does it consist of portions of the medical records for the defendant that you provided to the government?
Yes, it does.
I move to admit Government Exhibit 237.
Any objection? No, Judge, thank you. Okay.
Now, based on your prior review of the Government Exhibit 237, does it include records from both your hard copy file as well as format?
Yes, it does.
Now, approximately when did your office begin using electronic record keeping?
In March 2011.
And once you switched to electronic records, did you use the record keeping system exclusively for patient records?
Yes.
All right, now I'd like to focus on the time period before March of 2011, before the switch to electronic record keeping. In that time period, what were the methods you used to issue prescriptions for your patients?
A handwritten prescription or telephone call-in prescriptions.
And when you say telephone call-in prescriptions, who would you be calling?
The pharmacy.
And in those circumstances, where you would call in the pharmacy, what information did you have to provide to the pharmacy?
A patient's name, date of birth, medication, quantity dose of medication, refills, and a signature if it was written. Otherwise, just a verbal over the phone.
Now, in your paper records, did you keep a record of each time you called in a prescription for a patient?
No, I did not.
Why not?
It was just a standard of practice at the time that you would write a note every time you called in a prescription.
Now, in your medical practice, do you sometimes receive phone calls from patients?
Yes.
And prior to moving to your electronic system in 2011, did you always create a paper record for such phone calls?
Not every time, sometimes.
Now, turning to when you switched to electronic record keeping in March of 2011, what, if any, ways were you able to issue prescriptions to your patients at that time, after that time?
After that time, they would be done electronically through an open telephone encounter. And then you put in the name of the medicine, the dose, all the specifics, and then you would hit send, and it would go directly to the pharmacy.
And could you also still, at that time, in addition to that, do call-in prescriptions?
You could also, yes, call in prescriptions also.
And did you, in fact, do both in your practice?
Yes, I did both.
All right, now going back to Government's Exhibit 237, do you see the first page of the exhibit on your screen?
Yes, I do.
And can you explain to the jury what type of record this first page is?
It's a written medical record of an encounter or progress note on patient Robert Kelly, dated September 12th, 1994.
And is this your handwriting on this page?
Yes, that's my handwriting.
Now directing your attention to the first entry on the page. Had you met the defendant before that date?
No, I had not.
So was this your first meeting with him?
Yes, it was.
And when you, in your practice, when you meet a patient for the first time, what is your practice as to that first meeting? What do you do?
The first meeting, you take a history first while they're there. That's the history of the patient's illness, preceded by the chief concern or chief complaint, followed by past medical history, past surgical history, family medical history, review of symptoms, assessments, and plan, plus or minus some laboratory or imaging or testing results.
Now I want to direct your attention to the first line on the page. What is indicated there?
27, black male singer.
And was the defendant 27 years old when he first came to see you?
Yes.
Now I want to go down to the fourth line. What is indicated there?
A concern about chlamydia. No genital urinary symptoms.
All right, I'd like to direct your attention to the middle of the page where there is some numbers written. What does that refer to?
That is his weight, 193 pounds. Height, 6'1". And does this, 6'1".
And does this record reflect whether you conducted a physical examination during this office visit with the defendant?
Yes, it does.
And what does it reflect in that regard? Did you do a physical exam?
Yes, it's under those two numbers. The skin exam, normal, skeletal, lymphatic, head, ears, eyes, nose and throat, lungs, heart, abdomen, extremities, neurological, and genital urinary.
And did you order any tests related to sexually transmitted diseases following your physical exam?
Yes, I did.
And what tests did you order?
The tests I ordered were a chemistry, which is generally kidney and liver, a blood count or screen for like anemia and leukemia, and then there's chlamydia tests and syphilis tests.
So those last two are related to STDs.
Yes, they are.
Now I'm turning to page 8 of the exhibit. Do you recognize what type of document this is?
This is a lab result.
And do you see where it says drawn date and time?
Yes,
What date is listed there?
September 13th, 1994.
All right. Now, going back to the first page, you had indicated this date here is that September 12th or 13th of 1994. Now, having looked at the lab report,
I say it's September 13th, 1994.
and according to this document, what were the results of those two STD tests that you ordered on September 13th of 1994?
The two tests, chlamydia and syphilis tests, were negative.
All right, I'd like to now turn to page 2 of Government Exhibit 237. Is there an entry on this page for an encounter with the defendant on January 23rd, 1995?
Yes, there is.
And what kind of encounter was this?
It's a progress note with the chief concern, examination, assessment, and plan.
And what was the chief concern on this visit?
Penile stinging, 1.5 days, no discharge, no partners, illness, not known, no known drug allergies.
And can you tell from this record whether you examined the defendant that day?
It says exam and then decline rectal exam, penis. There were no discharge.
What, if any, test did you order following this exam?
I ordered a gonorrhea culture and a chlamydia test.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 11 of Government's Exhibit 237. Does this indicate the results of those tests?
Yes, it is. T does. Yes, it is. Does. T does.
And what does it indicate?
Positive growth of necessary gonorrhea, negative test for chlamydia and syphilis.
And so what does that test result mean with respect to gonorrhea?
That he had gonorrhea, explaining his chief concern at that visit.
What is gonorrhea?
It's a sexually transmitted bacterial disease.
Is it curable?
It's curable.
Now, as we see in this exhibit, the lab issued this report on January 28, 1995, correct?
Correct.
I want to turn back to page 2 of Government Exhibit 237. Is there an encounter on this page from February 7th of 1995?
Yes, there is.
And what kind of encounter was that?
Progress note.
And what, if anything, happened during that encounter? Was that an in-person visit?
It was an in-person visit.
And what happened during that?
After talking to somebody, I can't make out that name. A patient came today and I treated him because that result with a Z-Pack and a shot of cetriaxonone, 250 milligrams intramuscularly, and educated the patient to tell the partners to practice safe sex.
And is that indicated over here?
Yes.
And what does that mean? Advise the patient to tell partners and recommended safe sex.
With sexually transmitted disease, you have to educate the patient. Make sure you treat the patient and have the patient inform any sexual contacts that they should have been seen and treated.
Meaning sexual partners?
Yes, sexual partners.
And why did you advise the defendant in that manner?
Because I just diagnosed him with gonorrhea.
Is that your regular practice when you tell a patient that he or she has an STD?
Yes, that's my regular practice.
And by STD, you mean sexually transmitted disease.
Sexually transmitted disease, correct.
Has it always been your regular practice?
It's always been and is my regular practice.
I'd like to direct your attention to page 3 of the exhibit. What's reflected for the encounter on May 1st of 1996?
It's a progress note. Visit. Do you want me to proceed?
Sure.
A chief concern is penile pertinent. Drip, 2 days. Declines culture. Exoteria for privacy.
And what culture did you want to run at that point?
I would only have taken an educated or retrospective guess. Chlamydia.
I would object. Make sure you have the microphone on and you can take your mask off. Otherwise, I can't hear you. Are you objecting? Yes. When you say you have an educated guess, are you talking about your usual practice or do you know what happened next?
It would be my usual practice to repeat what I just did in the previous visit.
Okay. Thank you.
Would those be testing for STDs?
Yes, it would.
And that involved cultures, is that correct?
Gonorrhea culture, chlamydia, and whatever else I would have thought of at that time.
And your notes indicated that the patient, the defendant, declined for privacy reasons, correct?
That's correct.
Now, is there another entry on this page for October 29th? Well, what date is that entry for?
October 29th, 1988.
88 or 98?
I'm sorry, 98.
And what does that indicate?
Chief concern was sore tip of the penis within 24 hours. Episodic. No discharge. Exam negative. Impression. Urethritis. And I drew the arrow pointing to the treatment above, which is, I think, was the treatment I gave on May 1st, 1996.
So the same treatment?
I think the treatment for both of those visits.
What was the treatment for?
Most cause of urethritis, most likely treat chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Now I'm going to direct your attention to page 162 of Government Exhibit 237. Was there an office visit by the defendant on this date?
Yes, there was.
And what is the date indicated?
June 5th, 2000.
And what was the complaint on that date?
The complaint was irritated penis, Saturday evening progress into swelling of the head of the penis and red bumps, itched, preceded by several hours before wore leather pants. They were black, tight around the waist without underwear for a photo shoot. No dysuria, that's burning or urination. No hematuria, that's blood in the urine. No frequencies of urination, otherwise feels well.
I'm just going to stop you for a moment. That portion that you read, is that what the patient, the defendant, Mr. Kelly, reported to you on that visit?
And right, it was what he reported, then what I asked for, pertinent, positive, or negative.
And did you conduct any examination during that visit?
Yes, there was an examination.
And what do your notes reflect regarding that?
It says exam glands penis, that the head of the penis, very small vesicle, there are very small blisters, and
And what else is reflected on your notes for that visit?
my impression and plan.
And what was that?
My impression was either contact dermatitis from the black dye in the leather or leather components or herpes simplex virus.
Is that what's as a differential diagnosis?
That is correct. A different diagnosis for his visit.
And what does that mean?
That means the possibility based on the history and the exam.
And you mentioned contact dermatitis. What is that?
That's a skin reaction most common in the community would be like poison ivy. I was wondering if it was from the dye in the leather pants or the leather tanning agent causing it.
And what was the other possible diagnosis?
Herpes simplex virus or genital herpes.
And to be clear, was genital herpes the type of herpes you suspected the defendant had at that point based on your examination?
Correct.
And why did you suspect genital herpes as well? Why did you indicate genital herpes as one of your two diagnoses in your differential diagnosis?
They both were cause they both were cause of vesicle
Vesicles.
vesicles or blistering or bumps.
And what is genital herpes?
A sexually transmitted disease caused by herpes simplex virus, usually type 1. It could be type 2.
And so genital herpes is which type generally?
It's a viral illness caused by the herpes simplex virus. There's more than with your stereotype. Most common is stereotype 1. It could also be most commonly, it's type 2 and could also be type 1.
Okay, so just to be clear, most commonly it's type 2. Is that correct?
I believe it's type 2. I could be wrong on this moment.
All right, now what, if any, test did you order this at this visit?
The herpes simplex virus culture.
And why did you do that?
Because I suspected herpes simplex causing the irritated penis that progressed into swelling of the head of the penis with red bumps and a physical exam of small vesicles.
And as we just went over, prior to that date, you had previously diagnosed the defendant with an STD, correct?
Correct.
Gonorrhea, specifically, correct?
Correct. Gonorrhea.
Now, is genital herpes curable? I'm sorry.
It's not curable. It can go into remission, but generally not curable.
Now, you indicated that you ordered or that you conducted a herpes culture. Is that right?
That's right.
And can you explain to the jury what that is, what that means?
It's where you take like a cotton tip swab the lesions on the penis, and then put it into a cultural media. The results can vary. If you don't get it at the right time, you can get a false negative. I like to catch it early so you get a positive culture.
So just to explain a little bit more about what that means, it's timing. Is timing very important for a herpes virus culture?
Timing is very important for herpes virus culture
Can you explain why that is?
because it goes through its changes of the skin from watery blisters with the red base to the drying blisters and the flaking of the blisters. They're not shedding the virus. The virus is absent by then. The virus are usually present at the beginning of the lesions, and even then you might get a negative culture.
And does a negative herpes culture mean you don't have herpes?
No, it doesn't mean you don't have herpes. You may not have captured it. It's a total clinical presentation of the history, the exams, and then in the future response to treatment, which helps you confirm the diagnosis. You don't always get a positive culture.
And so, how is it that you, as a doctor, diagnose herpes? I think you were just alluding to it. What factors do you look at?
Over time, If a patient has a recurrent skin lesions or penis lesions of the same nature and then it responds to treatment, then it's genital herpes.
Now I'm going to show you page 20 of Government Exhibit 237. What is this record?
It's a lab result from June 5th, 2000, herpes simplex culture. The result was negative.
And did this result come in June 7th of 2000?
Yes, it did. It came in on June 7th, 2000.
And what, if anything, did you conclude from that negative result of the herpes culture?
That it was not conclusive and that we had to follow the clinical course to see if he called or repeated any more future bumps or penis lesions, and then try treatment and see if it responds to treatment either intermittently or long term.
So fair to say you did not conclude that the defendant did not have herpes based on this test.
I did not conclude that he did not have herpes. He still could have had herpes.
Now, given the uncertainty of the negative culture result that you just testified about, as a doctor, what, if any, practice do you have regarding advising your patients regarding such results if they exhibit herpes symptoms?
Well, if it's pretty possibly herpes or could be herpes, I, once again, advise the patient to seek medical help with the lesions occurred or advise. Informal sexual partners or potential herpes, safe sex, use a condom, inform your sexual partner so that they can make a decision whether or not to have sex with you or not.
And is that something you did with the defendant?
Eventually, I came to the conclusion he had herpes simplex with recurring calls or complaints about herpes bumps, and he did respond to herpes treatment when they became more common. I recommended regular treatment instead of intermittent treatment.
So after this initial office visit in 2000, did you in fact hear from the defendant again regarding the same types of symptoms?
At some point, because I began prescribing Valtrax, basically, yeah, Valtrax, the treatment for herpes. I do recall him making a comment once when I educated him on safe sex. Then I should not put it in raw. I should put a hood on it.
That's what the defendant said to you?
At one point, and I said, yes, you should use a condom.
What did you understand him to mean? I should not put it in raw.
That he should have protection on his penis, shouldn't just be uncovered.
And what did you understand him to be referring when he used the term a hood?
A condom.
And this was after you diagnosed the defendant with herpes?
At some point over the years from June 5th, 2000.
One moment, Your Honor. Court? Okay. And doctor, just to be clear, when you advised the defendant to put on a condom, that was for purposes of engaging in sexual activity, correct?
I don't know what other reason you put a condom on for. I'm sorry.
Just so we're clear.
I guess we're clear.
Now you testified that you began treating the defendant in 1994 and continued to treat him for approximately 25 years, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you also testified that at some point you concluded the defendant had contracted genital herpes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how did you come to that conclusion?
Over time, complaints that the patient had concerns about the bumps and that at times the medicine would help, so he would call and request a prescription for what he called the blue pill.
And what did you understand the defendant to mean when he asked you for the blue pill?
To treat him for genital herpes.
What, if any, how did you, in your practice, treat the defendant's genital herpes?
Well, initially, as I recall, intermittently until, in general, the rule is if it occurs more than 3 times in a year, you should be taking medicine every day, a pill a day, to reduce shedding and reduce the risk, but not eliminating the risk of spreading it to someone else. But you can reduce the risk by taking medicine every day instead of as needed.
And when you say as needed, what are you referring to?
As needed for outbreaks. Like if you just have 1 outbreak a year or 2 outbreaks a year, that would be appropriate. But if it's more than 3, the rule is, in general, to start them on a daily pill to perhaps not have any more outbreaks, reduce the viral shedding.
And in your time as the defendant's doctor, did there come a time where the defendant had more than 3 outbreaks a year?
Well, I can only assume based on me assisting on taking it once a day and prescribing him at a month at a time with a year of refills to reduce phone calls and to encourage regular treatment.
And so you did, in fact, prescribe the defendant with a medication to treat genital herpes for a 12-month supply?
Yeah, the phone calls seem to be frequent for the blue pill, so I would encourage one a day, 30 pills instead of a 5-day treatment course or 10-day treatment course.
Now, I think you mentioned the medication Beltrax.
It's an antiviral agent, vernacular.
Is vernacular the generic name of the drug?
Yes, it is the generic name.
Is Beltrax the brand name?
That's correct.
After you first prescribed Beltrax or vernacular to the defendant, how did he suspend to the it's supposed to be respond to the treatment?
Yeah. I would I would make the bumps go it would no, I'm sorry. It would make the bumps go away.
Okay, it would help with the outbreak.
Yes, it would.
Did you prescribe Beltrax or its generic version to the defendant multiple times?
Yes, I did.
After you first prescribed Beltrax or its generic version to him, did the defendant continue to ask you to prescribe it for him?
Yes, he did.
And how did you do so?
It was phone call usually from one of his employees, most commonly from a man named June Brown.
And did he also sometimes call you himself?
He would call himself, yes.
Now you mentioned, well, I'm going to show the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 3. Do you recognize this person?
Yes, I do.
Who do you recognize it to be?
June Brown.
And have you met June Brown personally?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate photo of him?
It's a fair and accurate photo of him.
I move to omit Government's Exhibit 3.
No objection. That's in evidence.
And may we publish it?
Yes.
And who did you understand June Brown to be with respect to the defendant?
An employee of Mr. Kelly.
Now sitting here today, do you recall the exact date that you came to the conclusion that the defendant had genital herpes?
No, I cannot come to the conclusion about the exact date.
Based on your review of Government's Exhibit 237, prior to your testimony here today, is it fair to say that the Government Exhibit 237 includes multiple records indicating that you had reached such a conclusion in the past medical history portions of the various progress notes?
Yes, in the electronic medical records.
And again, you made that switch to electronic records in March of 2011.
Correct.
I want to show you page 124 of Government's Exhibit 237. What is the date of this record?
The date is December 9th, 2011.
And what, if anything, does this record reference regarding herpes?
Herpes is in the past medical history, as also along with the current assessments.
And what, if any, treatment plan is indicated here?
Continue Valtrex 500 milligrams, one tablet orally once a day.
And does it also indicate that at this time, or what, if anything, does it indicate about what medications the defendant was currently taking at that time?
The current medication was Valtrex 500 milligrams, one tablet a day.
And again, the Valtrex was prescribed to treat his genital herpes.
That is correct.
And what is indicated under history of present illness?
The reason why he was at the office, I had asked him to come in to register since the office changed to electronic medical records. At the time, I also asked him to have a well adult exam, review of symptoms, examination, screening, labs, and the flu shot, and he declined.
All right, so EMR, that's that switch.
Electronic medical record.
Just for the court reporter, let's make sure we're not talking at the same time, okay? Now you indicated that at a certain point you changed the way you were prescribing Valtrex to the defendant, correct?
Yes, that's true.
And did you explain why you were doing so to the defendant?
I don't think I explained it to him, but it was transmission from less phone ends and more electronic prescription.
So explain what you mean by that.
Well, before electronic records, prescriptions were called in, not always recorded. Electronic medical records allow you to record more prescription unless it is at night or on a weekend or something where you don't have access to the system.
Did you indicate to the defendant that you were prescribing 11 refills at a time?
I frequently encouraged him to take it daily instead of as needed. So I frequently would prescribe 30 pills to encourage one a day with a year of refills to reduce requests for the pills and encourage him to stay on it long term.
And what, if any, based on your treatment of the defendant, what, if any, conclusion did you reach about whether he was, in fact, taking it every day, 12 months a year?
My conclusion, this one visit gives me the impression he was taking it once a day.
Did you ever reach a different conclusion?
Not that I can recall.
All right, I'm going to show you another page, okay? Before I get to that, going back to how you issued prescriptions for the defendant, would you both call the pharmacy and issue electronic prescriptions for him?
Yes, that would occur.
And what was the main pharmacy that you called to issue the defendant's prescriptions?
Walgreens at 641 North Clark in Chicago.
And was there a name commonly used to refer to that Walgreens?
It was referred to the Rock and Roll McDonald's Walgreens.
Why was it referred to that way?
It was a rock and roll theme to McDonald's, and there was also a Hard Rock Cafe across the street. The Walgreens across the street from those two rock and roll places.
Showing the witness only what's been marked for identification, it's Government Exhibit 502, 520. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
And what is depicted on this photograph?
It's a McDonald's, which was referred to as the Rock and Roll McDonald's in Chicago.
And that is what the Rock and Roll McDonald's in Chicago looked like in the past?
That's how it looked like in the past, correct.
I move to admit Government's Exhibit 520.
Any objection? Judge, I simply asked for a date if we could, please. Well, it's really a question. Is it the McDonald's? Did it change or something?
It's since been torn down and rebuilt.
This is what it looked like when. I guess before it was torn down and rebuilt.
Yes.
All right.
I move to admit, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we publish?
Yes.
Sylvia, we're at 2 hours and 26 minutes. Should we stop?
Ooh, my mouth is tired.
I know, man.
Somebody's sleepy.
Me, I keep yawning.
I see.
Yeah, it's long.
Ooh,
I'm silly.
Keep going?
Let's just stop.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at 4:16.
4:16. I think Candy Cane dropped on out, probably went to bed. It's what, about
Yeah, time is
6 hours.
time is different there. I'm sure.
11,
Yeah.
12, 1, 2, 3. It's about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's pick this up. When should we pick this up, Sylvia?
Tomorrow at 7:30.
Tomorrow at 7. Sounds good.
All righty,
No,
y'all.
30 or 7?
no interaction with the chat. Just go in there, please hit the like button. We appreciate you all coming in. We appreciate everybody listening and stuff right there to us. Excuse for some of the errors and some of the mispronounced words. You know, these not reading doctor's terms, so it's really, really hard. But you know, we got through it and stuff right there. So I appreciate you all. Hit that like button. Love you. Have a wonderful evening,
y'all.
and we'll see you
Yeah.
tomorrow
See you
at
tomorrow.
7 p.m. for those that are on the East and Midwest, and 4 p.m. on the West Coast.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.